Hello everybody, this is Matt at MBE. Today I want to go over what details goes into disassembling and cleaning and inspecting the cylinder heads. Because it's not just about, oh, just take the cylinder heads apart, you clean them, and we got the 14-year-old kid in the back doing all of this. We don't do that. We actually have the most experienced guy in the shop that does this. 70 years old, Dave Selvig, like just an absolute rock star this guy is, okay? Just to give you an idea, his experience, 16 years at Penske's, 10 years at Yates, and then built all of the offshore motors and took care of all of them for the
Popeye team, I think
with
it was.
with the Popeye's offshore boat in the 80s and early 90s. So this guy is no schmuck. He can do everything. But anyways, so what Dave will do, so he takes all the heads apart. He's going to look at all the seats and make sure that we just don't see anything crazy right off the bat, okay? One thing nice about it, because if the heads were done here, they have the proper seat material, so we typically don't see that. 98% of the companies use the other material because they put a $17 seat instead of a $70 seat. But people want to buy on price. Well, you get shit. You buy shit, you get shit. So the one thing with us, everything looks perfect, and this is a set of heads that was run extremely hard. That's why they're in here. So we look at all this, everything looks great, no problems here. Then we go to, and because of the customer base that we have, if it's normally aspirated, typically they're either going to run heavy, high RPM, or it's an extreme endurance application. So even for the NA stuff, we have to look at it. But then you have all the power adders. You got a heavy nitrous application. That's what this is. I don't know how many systems something like this has. I don't even know. Just a lot. And then you got the Pro Charger guys and the turbo guys and all of that. Well, then we need to look at all these parts. So let's just go into it. And mind you, when we do all of this, this takes 3 to 3.5 hours to do a set of heads correctly. So first thing we'll do, we'll look. He'll grab each valve, look at it. He'll check the stems, make sure there's not any odd wear or anything. Look at all that. Okay, so when he looks at all this, he's fine. Then he'll go back and clean these with Scotch-Brite. Because this customer coated the valves, all we're going to do is clean these with Scotch-Brite. Dave's going to check them for straightness in this fixture here. And if they're straight, then they won't have to be ground. And I would say 99% of the time, probably more, they don't have to be ground. That's because they have no wear because of the seat material and the coating we put on there. It's just, everything works so much better. Okay, so he's going to do all of that. Then he's going to go to the retainer, and he's going to check each retainer to see if it is stretched. You find somebody else that's doing that goes to this effort, I would be stunned. I don't even know if even people know how to do it or why to do it. Whoops. But so typically Dave can measure this, and that'll give him an idea, because there's a number that we would go to if this is starting to stretch. So if it's starting to stretch, then we know we need to replace it. And they can stretch for a number of reasons. One thing here, we always make sure we use Ti 17. That's a higher grade of titanium. That's why the retainers are a little bit more money. But if they're a cheaper grade of titanium, you'll find that they're stretched very, very often. And then we'll replace those, because once they start stretching, they're going to stretch. Then the other thing we do, when it's a power adder application, we have to measure the overall length of the valve, because what happens under the heat, the valve will stretch. Okay, so it'll get longer. Okay. And most customers, I would say most customers, a lot of customers aren't paying attention to the lash and things like that, which they should be. If lash starts moving, it starts getting tighter, we know that the valve is starting to stretch. Once it starts stretching, it's annealed, it's going to keep stretching. It just doesn't fix itself. You got to get it out of there. Because once the lash is taken up, in the end it's going to be oil pan failure, and none of us want that because that costs too much. Okay, so we measure all of that. Typically, like with this valve, it has a convex on it. But we'll measure that, and it's crazy. You'll like this one right here. I think that this one needs 6 intake valves because they're stretched. But they did say they had some tune-up issues with it. But luckily, we're going to catch it beforehand. So some of these valves are stretched 5 thousandths, some are 8. We have seen that they have stretched so much because the tune-up was so bad that the head of the valve actually shrunk 30 thousandths. It pulled so far that this shrunk. And then the valve was seating way down in here and just got lucky it didn't go all the way through. But we've seen that a number of times. I mean, I would say 3 times in the last 15 years we've seen it. So it does happen, okay? Okay, so once that's all proofed out, we look at the exhaust valves. Dave's going to look at every part of the valve. He's going to measure stems. He's going to look and see if there's wear here. If there's wear here, we know that the valve spring's out of control. And then he'll be like, hey, we got to get on this. Something's not right. And then we'll get with the customer, the engine builder, and start asking questions so we don't have an issue. So when the stuff comes back, it's in great shape, and then we don't have to replace anything. A lot of times when the heads come in, they're going to change valve springs automatically. We do have like a set in here that's in the other room. The customer, they hardly have any passes on them. So then Dave will check every single valve spring for it. And what we'll do is if we see that there's a discrepancy by a bunch, of course, then we'll change those. But if there's not a big discrepancy, typically we'll take the ones with the most pressure, put those on the intake side, and the ones that are still within tolerance that have less pressure, we put those on the exhaust side. 2 reasons. The weight of the valve on the exhaust side is much, much less, and the ramp speeds are typically less aggressive on the exhaust, so it's much easier to get away with it. That is if it has the same intake springs and same exhaust springs. Sometimes they don't. That's one thing here. We just don't try to fit it for that. A lot of times you'll get 8 spare intakes and 8 spare exhausts from us because we'll have 2 different valve springs on the intake and exhaust to make sure we get everything perfect for what you need. But all of this takes a ton of time, okay? It just to do it right. But in the end, when we assemble and everything, nobody has to worry. So that extra money that we charge and the time we put into it, I think it's like valuable to no end, especially when there's somebody like Dave doing it. But that's MBE and our inspection processes. Thank you.